8 months ago, our son Harold embarked on his journey to school, leaving Sabrina and me to transition into the phase of empty nesters at the youthful age of 45. We beamed with pride at his scholarship to Oxford University. Now, as empty nesters, we find ourselves in the process of rekindling our relationship and embracing a new chapter in life devoid of children. I assumed that our married life would immediately improve, and we would return to the activity that used to be frequent and fun. However, during the initial 2 months, Sabrina grappled with a touch of melancholy, seeing her beloved son venture into the world on his own. Moreover, as she approached her 46th birthday, she became aware of some new facial lines and a few extra pounds. While I found these features only added to her allure, she seemed to perceive them as signs that life was slipping away and that the days of thrill and adventure were behind her. Upon researching, I discovered that such sentiments were common. In response, I endeavored to offer her constant encouragement, abundant compliments, and ample time to adjust to our evolving family dynamic. It took a couple of months, but on Friday night, she returned from work radiating happiness and contentment, reminiscent of the wife I knew 20 years ago. Bursting with smiles, she seemed like a rejuvenated woman, and we spent the weekend ensconced in each other's arms, making up for lost time from years spent tending to responsibilities that were now a thing of the past. The following morning, I awoke to find Sabrina nestled against me, her face glowing with satisfaction. "Good morning," she greeted me with a smile. "Last night was incredible. Whatever sparked that, I want more of it." "I love you, darling," was my simple response as I held her tightly. For the first time in years, I felt that our marriage was back on track, ready to embark on the next phase of our journey together. 3 months later, our lives were flourishing, financially stable with fulfilling jobs, Harold excelling in school, and our married life blossoming beautifully over the past 3 months, drawing us closer than ever before. Every moment spent alone together was cherished. Friday nights had become our cherished tradition, date nights filled with movies, dinners, and an eager rush home to revel in each other's company. It was our dedicated effort to maintain a vibrant life beyond the confines of our home, a nostalgic nod to our younger selves as we sought to relive our youth. On this particular Friday evening, she suggested we extend our outing with a drink after dinner. With a playful squeeze on my leg and a mischievous grin, she hinted at the promise of an enticing evening ahead. She had heard about a new club called A Hideaway from her colleagues at work, and it was only a brief 10-minute drive away. The club proved to be a delightful spot, alive with the soulful tunes of live jazz. We indulged in a couple of drinks at the bar, and Sabrina's affectionate and flirtatious demeanor heightened the allure of the evening. Her vivacious energy was contagious, and I eagerly anticipated the moments we would share later in the night. As I savored my third martini, the band took a brief intermission, and a stranger approached us, calling out Sabrina's name with familiarity. My surprise was palpable as I watched my wife's expression shift from joy to apprehension, hastening to introduce us before any further exchange. "Hello, Nathan, how lovely to see you," Sabrina greeted him with a warm smile, welcoming his embrace. "This is my husband, Stephen," she introduced as a pang of jealousy surged through me, a nagging intuition hinting at something amiss. Despite my inebriated state, I couldn't ignore the mounting coincidences. Sabrina's newfound happiness, the discovery of a new bar, her unusually affectionate demeanor, and now, a chance encounter with a man precisely at the bar she insisted we visit. Though lacking concrete evidence, suspicion began to gnaw at me, placing me on high alert. Nathan appeared to be in his early 40s, charming and possessing a deep voice reminiscent of Barry White. He engaged us in pleasant conversation, and as we shared another drink, my initial apprehension started to dissipate, entertaining the notion that perhaps his presence was merely serendipitous. However, as we sat together for 20 minutes, enjoying the music of the jazz band, the atmosphere shifted. Nathan boldly asked if he could have the pleasure of dancing with my wife. Before I could respond, Sabrina stood and, with a casual reassurance, led him to the dance floor, leaving me rooted to my seat. Anger surged within me as I realized the setup, but against my better judgment, I chose to stay and observe. As they danced, my discomfort intensified. Every subtle gesture, every whispered word fueled my growing unease. Sabrina's closeness to Nathan, the way she nestled her head on his shoulder, her arms wrapped around his neck, it all grated on my nerves. Alarm bells rang loudly in my mind, confirming my suspicions of trouble brewing. When they returned, their demeanor unaffected, Nathan resumed conversation as if slow dancing with my wife was an ordinary occurrence. Nathan showered my wife with praise for her assistance at work, and when he inquired about my hobbies, Sabrina swiftly interjected, almost as if rehearsed. "Stephen adores football. He's a die-hard Manchester fan. Not a match escapes his attention on the telly," she exclaimed eagerly. "Is that so, Stephen? Tomorrow's playoff game must be on your agenda then," Nathan remarked. "Certainly, Winston and I never skip a game. We'll be at the pub relishing their victory over Liverpool," I confirmed. "Well, Stephen, today's your lucky day. I happen to possess 2 tickets to the match, graciously gifted by one of my suppliers," Nathan announced, revealing the coveted Tier 1 center field seats. I instantly grasped the underlying implication of his gesture. He resembled the serpent tempting Eve with the forbidden fruit. Suppressing my irritation, I responded with feigned nonchalance. "Impressive tickets indeed. Why don't you enjoy the game yourself?" "Not my cup of tea, old chap. I insist you have them, especially as you're Sabrina's husband." "It would be an honor," Nathan pressed. His words stoked a fiery resentment within me. I accepted the tickets, though seething with indignation. If he dared address me as old chap or old man once more, I feared I might lose my composure entirely. In a composed manner, I responded, "Thank you, Nathan, for your generosity. I'm sure Sabrina and I will make the most of the game." However, I braced myself for what I knew was coming when my wife interjected. "Darling, I really don't enjoy attending those games. You should go with Winston. Both of you would have a better time." "Don't worry about me. I have plenty to keep me occupied. So it's settled then. You'll go with Winston tomorrow," she declared firmly. At this juncture, I couldn't discern the extent of their relationship. Whether she had already crossed the line with him or was contemplating opening our marriage, it was evident that she desired him, while I found myself relegated to the sidelines. Despite her misinterpretation of my determination and astuteness, I chose to observe the situation unfold. Armed with nothing but intuition, observations from the dance floor, and the orchestrated setup at the bar, I resolved to let events unfold while plotting my next moves. Sharing my wife was out of the question, regardless of the allure of playoff tickets or any financial enticement. If she sought companionship elsewhere, she was free to do so. But I refused to participate in such a game, and her decision would have consequences. My perception of Nathan was clear. He exuded sophistication, charm, and a captivating allure, traits that undoubtedly appealed to women in their 40s. Yet the issue lay in his pursuit of a married woman, which rendered him off limits. Nathan was the archetype of a predator relishing in the game of seducing married women and reducing their husbands to mere bystanders, fueling his own ego and sense of power. I recognized him for what he truly was, a manipulative force of malevolence. Despite the jovial atmosphere induced by drinks and her time with Nathan, Sabrina failed to notice my silence since we departed from the bar. Winston and I attended the playoff game as planned, though I wasn't naive. Before leaving, I strategically positioned 2 voice-activated recorders in our home, activating them via the Find Me application on her phone while she showered. Assuming they would have ample time together in my absence, I anticipated either their rendezvous or discussion regarding the events of the previous night at the bar. However, to my surprise, she remained at home throughout the duration of the game, and the recordings yielded no noteworthy information. Despite my vigilance, my suspicions lingered, leaving me on edge for what lay ahead. Upon returning from the game, I found Sabrina impeccably dressed and a delicious dinner awaiting me. After exchanging affectionate greetings, she guided me to the kitchen. "How was the game, darling? Did our team emerge victorious?" she inquired. "Yes, Manchester secured a 3-1 victory," I replied. "Sweetheart, you must be thrilled to have experienced the game from such fantastic seats." "Nathan's gesture was incredibly kind," she remarked. Yes, very generous of him, I affirmed. Sabrina seemed content, her smile radiating throughout the evening. To my dismay, conversations about Nathan became a regular occurrence thereafter, whether at work or during our dinners. She praised his success, his lakeside cottage, his globe-trotting adventures, and his purportedly amiable nature. My patience wore thin. Then, one evening, she returned home brimming with excitement, showering me with more affection than usual. That was quite the warm welcome. "What's the occasion?" I inquired. "You won't believe it, but you remember how I've always talked about La Traviata?" Sabrina began excitedly. "Yes, I recall. Why do you ask?" I responded. "Well, there's a performance at the Royal Opera House this Friday," she revealed. "Sabrina, you know I can't stand the opera. Are you sure you want to go?" I questioned. "Yes, I really do. But you don't have to accompany me. That's the good news. You see, I had lunch with Nathan today, and he mentioned that he received excellent tickets to the opera from another supplier, similar to the ones he gave you for the football playoff. When he learned about my long-standing desire to see La Traviata, he generously offered them to me. He was disappointed when I explained your aversion to the opera and your unwillingness to attend. However, he came up with a wonderful idea, to take me to the opera and then for a nice dinner afterward. Wasn't that thoughtful of him, dear?" Sabrina gushed. "Very considerate. What a gentleman," I replied sarcastically before adding. "But naturally, you declined his offer." "Well, no. Why would I do that? I mean, I know you don't want to go, and it's not a big deal. Surely you don't mind if I accompany Nathan," Sabrina countered. "It is a big deal. The issue here is that you shouldn't be going on a date with another man, regardless of whether I'm present or not. That's not the behavior of a wife. Frankly, I'm surprised you would even entertain the idea of accepting a date," I stated firmly, fully aware of the orchestrated nature of this situation. "Oh my, I didn't see it that way at all. I'm sorry, you've misunderstood. You know Nathan. He's our friend. He generously gave you those fantastic playoff tickets, and we had a great time. He's always covering our drinks and has been a supportive colleague for me at work. I'm sure you understand," Sabrina explained. "Well, yes, he's done all that, and he appears to be a decent guy. However, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of my wife socializing with another man. I'd prefer if you didn't go or engage in anything foolish. You're an adult and can make your own choices, but you know where I stand." I expressed, my frustration and unease evident. She must have detected my agitation. "Okay, darling, I understand. I didn't mean to upset you, and I'll drop the subject now. I'm sorry if I've hurt your feelings," she responded, attempting to diffuse the tension. "My feelings are intact. It's the integrity of our marriage that concerns me," I retorted. She approached and planted a kiss on my forehead. "Don't worry your silly little head. I love you, and it was never going to be a date. Stop being jealous and let's move on from this," she reassured me. We let the matter rest, but I couldn't shake off the discomfort. That night, when she sought intimacy, I feigned a headache, still reeling from our conversation, feeling angry and hurt. Uncertainty gnawed at me. While I wasn't certain if she had been intimate with Nathan, it was evident that she had embarked on something with him, whether she realized it or not. I knew that if I didn't intervene, trouble loomed ahead. If they had crossed that line, our marriage was in jeopardy. The situation with Nathan escalated. I confided in her that his constant presence in our conversations made me feel jealous, and I requested she refrain from meeting him for lunch. She resisted, asserting her right to maintain their friendship. "Stephen, I declined the opera tickets as you asked, but you're overreacting. I won't stop being his friend, and if that includes occasional lunches, you'll have to be more understanding," she argued defiantly. Though enraged, I realized I needed to tread carefully to address this without further straining our marriage. Soon, their interactions extended beyond lunches to drinks after work. When I confronted her about a potential affair, she vehemently denied any wrongdoing, insisting she merely enjoyed his company. "So you're not attracted to Nathan?" "Don't lie to me, Sabrina," I confronted. "Well, every girl at the office is attracted to him, darling, But I'm committed to you and haven't crossed any lines, she replied. But you're tempted, aren't you? I pressed. What girl wouldn't be? He's undeniably handsome, and that voice is enchanting. But you have nothing to worry about, she assured me. I have nothing to worry about? How would you feel if I went out to lunch and drinks with a woman I desired? I doubt you'd be as understanding, I retorted. The conversation left a bitter taste between us, and our home grew cold for a few days. Sabrina was incensed by the mere suggestion of me being with another woman, vehemently asserting it was not an option. She even went as far as warning me she'd cut my balls off if I ever cheated, a threat that felt both absurd and indicative of her distress. I couldn't shake the feeling that our marriage hung precariously in the balance. Then it happened. One evening, she returned home 3 hours late, without so much as a phone call, leaving me consumed with worry and concern. She strolled in as though nothing was amiss, moving in for a kiss as if all were right with the world. To her astonishment, I pushed her away forcefully, fixing her with a steely glare as I uttered a venomous accusation that encapsulated my frustration and fear. Nice of you to finally come home. Did you spend the night with your friend? It was a tone she had never heard from me before, and she immediately apologized, citing a dead phone and losing track of time. But when I pressed further, demanding to know if she had been with Nathan, her silence spoke volumes. I was livid, making it unequivocally clear that our marriage stood on thin ice if such behavior persisted. If I find out you cheated on me with him, it's over. I won't tolerate infidelity or deception. I warned, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily upon us. Her assurance that she remained faithful shook me, and she apologized, promising to cease her interactions with Nathan. For the first time, I sensed a genuine understanding from Sabrina regarding the gravity of my demands. She stopped discussing him and his supposed greatness, but continued meeting him for lunch and drinks, unbeknownst to me. The only change was the absence of her recounting their time together. 2 weeks later, during dinner, I broached the subject, asking if she had indeed halted her lunches and drinks with Nathan. She reached out to touch my arm, offering a placating smile as if to soothe my concerns. In a sympathetic tone, she confessed that she was still seeing him, but chose not to inform me to spare my feelings. To my astonishment, she seemed oblivious to the magnitude of my anger and hurt upon hearing her admission. However, it was her next statement that caused my blood to boil, revealing a request no sane husband would tolerate. Darling, you know I love you, and Nathan is just a friend. The thing is, he asked me to accompany him to his company dinner function since his date canceled last minute. He needs someone by his side, and since we're such close friends, I agreed to go with him and assured him you'd be fine with it. Shaking my head in disbelief, I retorted, no, I'm not fine with it. Absolutely not. You can't go with him. Sabrina, you're still my wife, at least for now. Stephen, stop being so jealous and irrational. He's our friend, and he needs my support. I'm going and you'll just have to trust me. I promise everything will be okay, she countered. Old fool, damn. Had this man's influence rubbed off on her to the extent she now referred to me as the old fool? Sabrina, if you go, I can assure you I won't be okay, and our relationship will suffer. I can't physically prevent you, but the answer is no. You cannot go, I asserted firmly. Naturally, we slept in separate beds that night and for the following week. My interactions with her were minimal as I grappled with anger and disappointment over the Nathan situation. To her credit, she seemed to comprehend my feelings and ceased pestering me about Nathan and the proposed date. The day following her confession, I received an unexpected call at work from Nathan. Apparently, Sabrina had given him my number, hoping he could persuade me to change my stance. I made a mental note to address this breach of trust when I returned home later that evening. Stephen, old chap, how are you? Nathan greeted me casually. Nathan, what a surprise. What brings you to call? I responded, curious to discern his intentions. I'm calling to apologize. I'm sure Sabrina filled you in on my request for her to accompany me to my company event. I realize now it was a mistake to involve her in that manner, and I apologize if it caused any strain at home, he explained. Yes, it was quite unexpected, and I made my feelings clear to her, I confirmed. She did mention indeed. You see, my error was not contacting you first and seeking your approval, rather than placing Sabrina in that predicament. It should have been a conversation between us men, Nathan acknowledged. I sat in stunned silence. The audacity of this man was staggering. As I listened to his smooth, persuasive voice, my anger surged. So, old chap, allow me to make it up to you. Name your preference, and I'll arrange it. Perhaps season tickets to Manchester would suit you, he offered smoothly. Nathan, are you seriously suggesting I trade my wife for football tickets? Are you attempting to reduce my wife to a commodity? Trading companionship for merchandise? Do you hold her in such low regard? I seethed, my anger palpable. Let me make one thing abundantly clear. I do not share my wife with anyone. And if you dare address me as old man or old chap one more time, I swear I'll rip out your tongue the next time we cross paths. I am perfectly capable of purchasing my own tickets. Let's put an end to this discussion, shall we? I insist that you cease your advances towards Sabrina and find someone else to keep you company, I asserted firmly. It was as if he hadn't heard a word I said as he continued speaking. Stephen, my friend, I'm sorry you feel that way. I genuinely like Sabrina and wanted to seek your approval for her to accompany me to my event. Please don't direct your anger towards Sabrina. Even though she expressed interest, the decision rests with me. Would you reconsider allowing her to be my date for that evening? Nathan, listen closely. No, stop asking. She will not be accompanying you, and that's final. Furthermore, I want you to cease your lunches and after-work drinks with her. It's affecting our marriage, and I'm sure you can comprehend the gravity of the situation, I insisted. Stephen, I'm sorry you feel that way, but Sabrina and I are just friends. I have no intention of ending our friendship because of your insecurities. I'm sorry you won't grant me this one request. After all I've done for you, including the football tickets and offering season tickets, you seem ungrateful, he retorted. Enough. I've already expressed my gratitude for the tickets, and as I said, I can purchase my own. Now please, leave us alone and refrain from meddling in my marriage. I snapped, slamming down the office phone in frustration. That evening, I returned home to a somber Sabrina. Clearly, she had heard about the conversation and didn't know how to react. Unable to bear the silence any longer, she spoke up. I heard about your conversation with Nathan today. Did you have to be so rude? You hurt his feelings. The glare I shot her after she mentioned Nathan's feelings could have turned our pond into solid ice in the midst of summer. Screw you and screw his feelings, I snapped. Isn't it interesting how concerned you are about his feelings and not your husband's? And why on earth did you give him my business phone number? Do you need to be with him that desperately? Maybe I should just leave and then you can be with your new boyfriend. She averted her gaze, murmuring, I was hoping you two could become better friends. You know, so we could all go out together. I'm sorry things turned out this way. I never intended for anyone to get hurt. Are you out of your mind, woman? I want nothing to do with him. And I made it clear that he needs to stop taking you out for lunch and drinks. In case you've forgotten, you're a married woman. It's time you started acting like one, or this will end in disaster. Mark my words, I retorted sharply. Her frustration boiled over, and she shot back, Stop behaving like a jealous teenager. We've been married for 20 years, and nothing is going to happen. I hope you're right. I replied coolly, my words tinged with bitterness. I'd hate to think I've wasted the last 20 years with the wrong woman. The weight of my statement seemed to hit her, and I hoped it would bring her to her senses. We didn't exchange another word that night. In fact, I started sleeping in our son's room, consumed by anger over her actions and remarks, needing to be alone. Sabrina was distraught over my decision to sleep separately and attempted to make amends over the following weeks. She claimed she had stopped meeting Nathan for lunch and tried to be a more affectionate wife. Eventually, I returned to our bed, but I wasn't ready to be intimate with a woman who harbored obvious feelings for another man. She wasn't pleased with my reluctance and made numerous attempts to initiate intimacy to no avail. I had a sinking feeling that Sabrina was still seeing Nathan, and my gut told me I needed to be vigilant if I wanted to salvage my marriage. Unfortunately, my suspicions were confirmed when I stumbled upon the date of Nathan's event while casually perusing my wife's text messages. We never had passcodes on our phones before, and I had never felt the need to snoop, but the discovery left me feeling despondent because I knew our relationship was about to change. However, this newfound knowledge also made my next steps clearer. It came as no surprise that Sabrina's recent displays of affection and attempts to be the perfect wife were merely an attempt to divert my attention away from the Nathan situation. What I learned was that she was planning to spring the news on me that she was attending the event with Nathan the following Thursday night. This realization sparked an idea. I wanted to test her loyalty and see if she would choose to be faithful despite my forbidding her to be with him. So over breakfast the next morning, I casually mentioned that I had a meeting scheduled on the 22nd in London and wouldn't be returning until late the following evening. Knowing full well that Nathan's event was on the same date, I offered her the opportunity to either deceive me by attending the event or come clean and confess her plans. Either way, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't stick around. If she admitted her intentions and went to the party, I would leave and file for a separation. If she attended without informing me, it would mark the end of our marriage. Unfortunately, Sabrina remained silent and chose not to divulge her plans. She continued to deceive me by maintaining the facade of a loving, perfect wife. Each evening, I returned home to wonderful dinners, a spotless house, and affectionate kisses. Yet there was no mention of Nathan or the impending event. As I kissed her goodbye on Thursday morning, I knew it would likely be the last time, and I left for my office with a heavy heart. However, my intention was never to travel to London. I planned to spend the night at the same hotel where the event was being held. During this time, I sought legal counsel and arranged for divorce paperwork to be prepared, along with arrangements for a potential date to serve the papers. I even offered to pay the process server double to accompany me to the hotel event and deliver the papers upon my approval. If Sabrina did what I suspected she would, then our marriage was over. Disguised modestly with a medical mask, tinted glasses, and a cap, I sat in the lobby, reading the newspaper while keeping a perfect view of the front doors. As expected, at 8 p.m., Nathan strolled into the hotel with my wife on his arm. She was adorned in a little black dress, dark stockings, and high heels, her figure accentuated, her lack of a bret evident. They laughed and greeted others in a jovial manner, their demeanor suggesting a loving couple. Though I anticipated their appearance, I wasn't prepared to witness their intimacy firsthand. Despite my seething anger, I managed to keep my composure and discreetly recorded the scene with my cell phone, a piece of evidence I would later share with my son when explaining the impending divorce. As I observed Sabrina with Nathan, I dialed her phone, watching as she glanced at the screen, then deliberately let the call go to voicemail before refocusing her attention on Nathan. It felt as though someone had ripped my heart from my chest as I witnessed her disregard for my call, prioritizing her time with him over our relationship. Though tears threatened to spill from my eyes, I held them back, leaving several voicemails in a futile attempt to salvage what remained of our bond. "Hi, baby, it's 8 p.m. I hope everything's all right since your phone went to voicemail. I miss you so much, and I love you," I pleaded in each message, clinging to the hope that she might listen, feel a pang of guilt, and leave the party before things escalated beyond repair. There was still a chance if she chose to leave or called me to confess. That night, she never bothered to listen to the messages. I lingered around the dinner area, keeping a discreet distance as I observed them. It became evident that their connection ran deeper than Sabrina had led me to believe. They behaved as a couple throughout dinner, careful to remain unseen. I monitored their movements, and by 10 p.m., after several dances and some intimate moments, it was apparent they were preparing to leave the dinner party. Armed with the room number obtained from the text messages and aided by the generous tip I had given the bellman, I knew exactly where they were headed: room 1246. Susan, the process server, arrived promptly at 10 p.m., and we reviewed my plans. I gladly handed her an extra 200 quid for her assistance. At 11 p.m., Susan and I boarded the elevator and made our way to room 1246. Susan knocked on the door, and we heard some movement inside as I positioned myself to the side of the peephole. A deep voice queried from within, "Who is it?" Susan held up her ID to the peephole and asserted, "Security, please open the door." Although he likely didn't scrutinize the ID, it proved effective, and we heard the lock disengage. As the door cracked open, revealing Nathan's face, I swiftly stepped in front of Susan and forcefully kicked the door open, causing Nathan to stagger backward, collapsing naked and bewildered onto the floor. A feminine gasp emanated from within the room as he rolled in front of Sabrina. However, her gasp morphed into a piercing scream upon realizing it was me standing before her. As Nathan lay sprawled on the floor, I pressed my foot firmly against his neck, all 200 pounds bearing down on him, commanding him not to move. Gesturing to Susan, I signaled for her to approach Sabrina and deliver the divorce paperwork. With a solemn expression, Susan handed the documents to Sabrina, capturing a snapshot of her shocked reaction holding the envelope. In a symbolic gesture of finality, I removed my wedding ring and flung it in her direction. Sabrina's face registered a mixture of disbelief and remorse as she witnessed my pain, finally grasping the gravity of her actions. Suddenly, she pleaded with me, professing regret and a desire to salvage our relationship. But it was too little, too late. "Stephen, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake, and I can't bear to lose you. Despite everything, I love you, and I don't want a divorce. Please let me come home with you. I'll explain everything and make things right again. Please don't do this." I shook my head incredulously, gazing at the woman before me with a sense of disillusionment. In that moment, I realized how aged and diminished she appeared. Witnessing her betrayal had extinguished any remaining affection I held for her. The love that had sustained me for years was now replaced with contempt and revulsion. With that realization, our marriage reached its final, irrevocable conclusion. Standing over Nathan, my foot still pressing down on his neck, I motioned for Susan to leave us alone with the unfaithful couple. As the door clicked shut, I turned to face my wife, my voice heavy with despair and anger. "Congratulations, you shattered my heart and brought an end to our 20 years together. And you did it in the most despicable way possible. You lied to me, betrayed me, and then chose to deceive me with that scumbag. Because of your actions, our time together has come to an end. Just sign the divorce papers and don't even think about coming home until Saturday afternoon. I'll need a day to gather my belongings. You can stay in our flat until it sells, which I imagine won't take too long. In the meantime, why don't you move in with this asshole?" I said, took my shoe off his throat, and slammed it on his manhood. As I left the room and my wife for the last time, there was a sound like a man in terrible pain. Epilogue. Nathan lost the ability to continue his lineage as he was pinned to the floor. He'd attempted to pursue legal action, but I made it clear to Sabrina that as she testified in his favor, I would reveal her affair to her family and present them with the incriminating photos. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she wisely chose not to cooperate, informing the police that she didn't recognize the individual responsible for his injuries. Nathan, feeling enraged and betrayed by the woman he had taken from me, was left seething with frustration. After 2 months of persistent attempts to reconcile, Sabrina reluctantly signed the divorce papers, finally acknowledging that our marriage was beyond salvaging. Realizing the irreversible damage done, she mustered the courage to share the truth with our son, taking responsibility for the demise of our once happy years together. With the sale of our flat, we divided our assets and embarked on separate paths. Nathan, incapacitated and nursing his wounds, distanced himself from Sabrina, now a single woman. He rebuffed her advances, urging her to move on and find someone else. At 46, divorced and carrying a few extra pounds, she found herself not as desirable as she once believed, particularly after the harsh reality check of Nathan's deceit. Meanwhile, I dedicated myself to self-improvement, hitting the gym diligently and shedding excess weight. 6 months later, I emerged in great shape and crossed paths with Tina, a charming 37-year-old divorcee with a delightful 9-year-old daughter named Emily. Tina appreciated my loyalty and affection, treating me like royalty, while Emily and I formed a special bond, and I relished the opportunity to spoil her. At Harold's graduation, Sabrina, now 50 and showing signs of age, appeared solitary and discontent with the direction her life had taken. Learning from Harold about her feelings of envy and sadness upon witnessing my newfound happiness with my new family, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her as I basked in the joy of my beautiful wife and daughter. Sabrina poured her heart out to our son, expressing deep remorse for her actions and how poorly she treated me. She couldn't forgive herself for succumbing to the seduction of that despicable man. She confessed to Harold how losing my love made her realize the magnitude of what she had given up and how much she missed our old life together. She recognized that her selfish desires had caused immense pain and loss for everyone involved. On the contrary, my life took a positive turn shortly after the divorce was finalized. Tina, having experienced the devastation of being cheated on by her ex-husband, made a solemn vow to never inflict such pain on me or our marriage. We remained devoted and faithful to each other for the next 30 years, cherishing the 3 grandchildren that Emily and Harold blessed us with. Nathan disappeared from our lives following his injuries, while Sabrina chose not to remarry, spending the next 2 decades as a lonely woman plagued by remorse for betraying me and destroying our once happy life together. Harold found happiness in marriage with a wonderful woman, expanding our family and giving us another grandchild. He forged a close bond with my new family, and Sabrina became a distant presence, only appearing at Harold's events and eventually at her funeral. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.